What if the biggest AI risk in your company isn't hallucinations? It's that you're quietly turning your team into button clickers. Because right now everyone's doing AI, but most companies are just buying the same tools as their competitors and calling it strategy. Geoff Gibbins from Human Machines is obsessed with the real advantage, not better prompts, better collaboration between humans and AI. And here's a novel founder use case. So maybe you need an AI collaborative coach that watches how your team uses ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude, then flags when you're outsourcing judgment, missing the real questions, or wasting time switching tools. So a question, if you could test 300 ideas before lunch, see which ones actually work in the market, and only apply human judgment at the moments that truly matter, how would you redesign your week, your team, or your entire company? Welcome to AI for Founders. I'm Ryan Estes. If you're a founder, a product leader, or marketer trying to win in the next 12 months, this interview is for you. And if you want your brain upgraded weekly without becoming a robot, go to the newsletter at aiforfounders.co. It's the newsletter for founders who love speed, hate fluff, and enjoy stealing unfair advantages in public. Subscribe and I'll send you the good stuff, the playbooks, the prompts, the shortcuts, and the occasional existential crisis. That's the newsletter at aiforfounders.co. And if this helped, please leave a review of the podcast like you're tipping your future self with 5 stars. Now, founders, quick question. Are you still hoping customers magically discover you? Or are you ready to be everywhere your buyers are already paying attention? Kitcaster helps founders and executives get booked on the kind your customers actually listen to, not the "my friend started a show" circuit. Because podcast guesting is the cheat code for trust. You borrow the host's credibility, tell your story like a human, and turn your expertise into inbound leads, partnerships, and sometimes even funding. And Kitcaster makes it stupid simple. We handle the research, the targeting, the pitching, the follow-ups, and the booking logistics. You show up, drop value, and sound like the main character. If you want consistent, high-quality podcast appearances without it becoming like your second job, go to kitcaster.com and talk to the team. That's Kitcaster by Moburst. Geoff, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to the show.
Good to see you. Good to be here as well.
Absolutely. So as we get started here, just give us a broad overview of your work, because I think it's going to be very important to the listeners of this podcast.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So, I'm Geoff Gibbins. I'm a consultant. I've worked for the last nearly 20 years working with companies on new product development, innovation, new business models. And over the last 3 years, roughly, I've been working on this kind of wild ride around generative AI, around how do companies take advantage of that and use that to change the way that they work together, the type of value they can deliver to their customers and their consumers. And obviously, like other people, been on my own personal journey of discovery around that too. And I run a consultancy called Human Machines, which is really all focused on how do you actually see AI not as a technology problem, but as a problem of human AI collaboration, and work with companies around how to redesign the way that they work in order to do things that weren't possible before we had just humans and just AI tools doing themselves, but actually reinventing the way that people work with humans and AI together.
Amazing. And kind of your trust bar on the website, which is human-machines.com, is some gigantic companies. So when you're working with kind of enterprise companies,
Yep.
That are characteristically, they move slow, probably for good reason. They also have a lot of compliance. And we're kind of juxtaposing that with AI technology, which iterates and moves very, very quickly.
Yep.
So when you're thinking about like generative AI and kind of what would be good applications, what kind of tools and what kind of applications are you thinking about for companies, for enterprise companies?
Yeah. So it's a great question. So some of the examples of the companies I've worked with the last few years, it's companies like the Coca-Cola company, it's Nestle, it's MasterCard, Pfizer, and they're all companies that are in large enterprises, often in highly regulated sectors. And I think there's two lenses to look at it. One is that they're looking at enterprise AI as an opportunity to get ahead in some instances, and there's a real kind of desire to not be left behind, which motivates people a lot. And I think my sense from the last couple of years is that this FOMO is really the main investment driver of a lot of what's going on around AI in the economy today. But the second thing is obviously to manage that risk. A lot of what companies are doing, which I think is the right approach, is rather than changing exactly what they do in their external facing services and experiences, they're using it on the inside first to actually reinvent the way that they work and use that to create some kind of competitive advantage. And so that's the type of work that I do with companies is not just to look at how do you drive greater efficiencies through AI, but how do you actually reinvent the way that you work? And that's really where I see the main competitive advantage comes from with AI. So it's, there's lots of tools, lots of technology. Everyone's selling you agents that are kind of generically built, and every company, every large enterprise is getting sold the same thing. And that means that, it's obviously opportunity to not lose steam and be left behind, but also it's hard to figure out how you differentiate if you're just buying the same technology and same tools and same data as all of your competitors. And so a lot of the work that I do is actually figuring out how do you redesign the way that you work in order to develop a competitive advantage. And my hypothesis is that over the next few years, reinventing your workflows, reinventing your work and your teams to integrate the best of what humans and AI can do together is where the real competitive advantage lies. It's probably one of the hardest things to do, but that's why it's hard to copy.
You bet. I mean, pardon me. You could speculate that like the entire growth of the stock market right now is all based on that value alone.
Yeah, that's
the
driver. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean the expense of whether it's cash or it's energy for AI is exorbitant. OpenAI doesn't necessarily have like an operating business model, or are they a business or are they a nonprofit? We don't really know. Truly it's the value being created by optimizing workflows. And I'm really curious, like within these companies, if it's, generative AI. So I'm thinking like copy generation, artwork, decks, marketing collateral, videos, these kind of things. How are they incorporating some of these tools, or how are you kind of instructing some of these companies to kind of redesign, like tactically, like what are the nuts and bolts of kind of what they're implementing on a daily basis?
Yeah, sure. So I think if you're an executive at a large organization, you're getting pitched all the time by individual vendors for point solutions. And typically what happens is that those vendors are, doing a really good job at automating the way that a lot of different companies are working right now. And so there's a value to doing that. And I think it's one of the easiest ways to deploy AI within your business in a short time frame, right? Because you can take a tool that kind of matches how you work today, and you can adopt it. I think what I have tried to do with companies I work with is actually think about how do we take a step back. Let's look at all the different amazing individual point solutions that are available and figure out, well, if we can do all these things in one, should we do the same process or should we actually organize the business differently? Right. So if you take the example of like, content generation you mentioned as an example, right? There's a lot of content tools out there that a content marketing team could run with. And if you took the same approach that you typically do of like, mapping out all the steps in the process, you could probably stitch together 3 or 4 different tools that would do everything that a content marketing team would do, right? In terms of picking up on signals, in terms of generating drafts, in terms of reviewing, like generating visuals, whatever it might be. The approach that I like to take is how do you actually redesign that workflow based on the fundamental outcomes you are trying to achieve by figuring out what's possible with AI that you couldn't do before, right? So rather than having a sort of human process where you go step by step in a linear fashion of figuring out, well, what are the things we want to stand for? What are the things we want to know? How do we draft it? How do we have a human review in place? How do you actually redesign that so you can have fewer steps in the chain? You can actually be generating hundreds of different options for something and then using synthetic testing or synthetic data to narrow what you should do. And then you actually use the market as a feedback loop into how you actually put out content. And you could be publishing a lot more than you ever would as a human team. And you're using the market to test out what you should be doing more of.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. It's so do you find yourself using like N8N, these kind of automation kind of tools a lot in the work?
Yeah, it could be N8N. It depends on sort of the enterprise stack that the teams have. And I think the key thing to understand is that, like, so I've done quite a bit of work, for example, in product innovation at large companies, right? And so there are, established design thinking processes that they have, which are all designed around human limitations. All right. So if you think about a product design team, for example, they will have, a structured process for thinking through things in logical steps, right? I'm going to figure out what are the top 6 or 7 customer needs that I want to solve for. And then within each of those, I'm going to figure out what are the top 6 or 7 product ideas that I can do. And I'm going to do some testing with humans. You sort of run through these steps, but they're all designed around the limitations of the human brain and like how we can think about things, right? So that design process is usually based around, well, how many post-it notes we put on a wall, and how many different concepts can a human think about at any given time, which is like, 6 to 10 things at once. And so you could automate that process, but the other thing you could do is, we'll say, actually, how about we actually scour the earth and figure out 300 project needs, and how about we look at identifying 400 product ideas and testing those against all different criteria, and then narrowing our focus as a human team on the 6 or 7 things that we've stress tested to offer the best appeal. Things like that.
Yeah. You mentioned Post-it notes, and I kind of smiled because I still see people do a lot of business on Post-it notes, and if that works for you, I think that's great, and oftentimes, it just becomes to habits. And when I see kind of companies, I'm working mostly with startups, so these people are looking for tools, looking to move fast, speaking to dozen startup founders all the time, dozens and dozens of them. And oftentimes the FOMO you talked about is like not knowing what they don't know. It's like, oh man, the technology is coming so fast that it's like, do I make a big investment on this side? Or really, if I wait 3 months, do the tools I already have the capacity for what I'm looking to do? Yeah. So I can see that kind of being a challenge as well, kind of a analysis paralysis almost,
Yeah, absolutely.
I was doing a little bit of research, and I saw a great quote. It said, or you said, the future belongs to human AI collaborations, not humans or AI. I think the audience of this podcast understands that deeply, but working in, large enterprise, a lot of this is coming on really fast. What do you think most of these leaders still misunderstand about that collaboration? Hey everybody, you know what's crazy? I've been sitting on a gold mine this entire time and I didn't even know it. My Gmail inbox, literally thousands of warm contacts who already know and trust me. But here's the problem every founder faces. How do you turn those relationships into revenue without feeling like a sleazy salesperson? That's exactly why I've been using warmstart.ai. And honestly, it's been a game changer for my business. This AI platform connects your email, analyzes all your existing contacts, and helps you identify who in your network might actually be interested in what you're doing. Then it writes personalized outreach messages that don't sound robotic or pushy. The best part, you review every single message before it goes out. No spray and pray nonsense. This is relationship-based selling done right. My listeners know I only recommend tools I actually use, and Warmstart has literally helped me reconnect with people I'd lost touch with and turn those conversations into real business opportunities. If you're a founder struggling with outreach, check out warmstart.ai and use code AIFF to get $50 off your first month. Trust me, your existing network is worth way more than you think. This episode is brought to you by MoBurst, the AI-first growth engine trusted by iconic startups like Calm, Robinhood, Reddit, Uber, and Google. MoBurst is a digital full-service mobile-first marketing agency that helps companies to scale and become category leaders. Whether you're finding product market fit or ready to accelerate growth, MoBurst delivers creative, data-driven solutions that help with scale and efficiency and impact. At MoBurst, we're not just guessing what works, we're predicting it. As an AI-first agency, MoBurst uses cutting-edge tools to analyze user behavior, adapt creative in real time, and uncover hidden growth opportunities. The result, marketing that's faster, smarter, and built to convert. From early stage startups to global brands, we've helped hundreds of companies overcome complex challenges, unlock new audiences, and optimize every metric that matters. At Moburst, we believe that creative thinking, advanced technology, and data are the core drivers of success at scale. If you're serious about scaling your business with precision and purpose, it's time to talk to Moburst. Visit moburst.com and let's build something category-defining together.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that I see often companies will start on the idea of human usage of AI is they think about it in terms of usage, right? So AI is a tool that you instruct as a human, and you kind of give it a prompt, and you can go through prompt training, and that's all good. And then you can get an answer, and it's really awesome. It's amazing. I think we've probably all seen the types of answers to questions that you never would have imagined. You can get them in seconds. And I think there's two things that don't get enough attention, which I think I'm starting to see more of. The first one is, how do you actually think about what's the right question to ask, right? So how do you actually cultivate that process of critical thinking and thinking about if I can get an answer to any question in 2 seconds, what should I be asking? Because I could ask 100 questions in an hour, right? And so what should I be doing? So that human critical thinking process, I think, is really important. And then the second thing is actual dialogue and collaboration. So thinking beyond AI as just a thing that you instruct and thinking about it more as a collaborator and thinking very deliberately about, well, how should I collaborate with this system that I'm working with? Like, how can I understand the way it works, its limitations, and when I should let it, take the reins and make decisions itself, and when should I have that human review process, and just thinking and working very deliberately with this new type of collaborator that we have in front of us. And so I think that's not often taught that much in companies. People are just sort of told, well, go and use AI, and they're not really taught about this collaboration. So one of the things I've been starting to do research around is, how can you actually measure not just the usage of AI, but what's the actual impact of the usage of AI? So I developed a framework called the Collaborative Results Index, which is all around how do you measure what are the results of your human AI collaboration, what's the quality of the relationship and the dialogue that you have when you're working with AI, and what's the resilience of your process. So actually, are you just outsourcing your thinking? Are you as an individual learning more and developing more domain expertise in that? And starting to develop a measurement system so that people and teams can actually measure how well they're using AI and how they're collaborating with it in a more deliberate way.
Is outsourcing your thinking bad? For example,
It's okay.
Because you were saying kind of like folks don't know which questions to ask. They should figure out what questions to ask. But I think that would be the best first question to ask an LLM is like, hey, what are my blind spots? What should I be asking you before I get into this work?
Yeah, so I actually think outsourcing your thinking is great as long as you're aware you're doing it and you think it's the right thing, right? So it's all about being deliberate about how you work and how you think. So there's this concept of metacognition, right? And so thinking deliberately about, how am I thinking? What am I going to spend my time thinking about? And what am I going to outsource? And so as you said, like working with AI is a great way to actually help spot the blind spots, unpack biases in the way you typically approach problems and say, hey, you know a lot about me. How can you figure out how I would misinterpret a situation like this, or what might I be missing out on? And so I think it's actually great to outsource your thinking as long as it's not all the time and you're doing it in the right moments and in the right ways. Because then it actually frees you up to spend your brain power, which, for us all is limited. Like, we can't all be thinking all the time. It's kind of exhausting. Then you can focus it on the things that matter most.
Yeah, I find it much more productive and satisfying to be a sculptor as opposed to a painter. If I come to an LLM to solve a problem and I'm like, this is exactly what I want narrowly, like, give me this thing, as opposed to opening up and being like, hey, what should I ask you to get the most out of this? Then it delivers you a big block of marble, and then you're just chiseling away. You're like, I see where you're going, but I don't want that. I don't want that. These things are great. This was an idea I hadn't heard before. That was a real kind of light bulb moment for me when I realized I was, just holding on to my cherished creative output, like it couldn't be upon,
Yeah.
or that like sharing that creative capacity with the LLM wouldn't generate in like maybe a better idea faster, you
Yeah,
know?
there's a real humility that I think is really important. And that's one of the things I try to think about is not just thinking about AI as something you use, but it's a collaborator that you genuinely see as like on level pegging with yourself, right? And you want feedback on yourself. And I think that's where a lot of companies will head in the future, is that we'll be working in these kind of human AI teams, as I call them, where you're getting feedback on AI, no, from AI, and then there's probably an AI evaluating how well you're evaluating AI, and there's a human evaluating how well you're evaluating AI, and this whole kind of crazy loop. And we're all going to be working and thinking in a different way. But the AI systems are going to be much more integrated as part of the teams that we're in, rather than just like a tool that we might choose to consult once in a while.
Yeah, 100%. So, I think the folks that kind of the audience of this podcast is fairly advanced, so I think like a lot of us are, I just make the assumption that they're a lot like me. Like this summer, I was building automations for everything.
Yep.
I was like, I was really excited about like, hey, what are the boundaries of what I can and can't do, both with generative, kind of opportunities, but then all the workflow automations. And what I found is that like this collaboration between human and AI is critical. So like, the human loop is huge, but there also seems to be a little bit of friction, and which just kind of results in me like maybe 3/4 of the automations I work, I just threw them out the door. I was like, actually, this is a bit burdensome, just actually managing that relationship, of all these AI agents. The ones I have are still, helpful, but we're kind of coming into a second phase now, I think, with as far as workflow automations and like really taking advantage of, where does it make sense for me just to do a repetitive task because I'm adding a lot of human context to it. So I guess the question is, where do you see teams accidentally building this kind of friction between human and AI collaboration?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. I'm trying to think. Sorry, can you give me a second just to think about that one? Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
It's kind of a weird question.
Yeah, no, sorry. And actually, I don't know, there's an issue with the Wi-Fi, but like my video was cutting in and out there. I couldn't quite see you the whole time, but I hope it's now fine now. So just to quickly, so the question was, where are teams deliberately creating friction with AI?
Accidentally creating friction,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it's a great question. I would say, I mean, in many situations, serendipity is kind of the birth of a lot of innovations, right? Like a lot of things get stumbled upon by accident. I can think of a couple of examples. One, I think, is actually, I was working with a company on an AI-powered product design tool. So this is a tool that would basically help to pull in data from TikTok and things like that to actually design ideas for like themes and then product designs in the fashion space. And within that, one of the things we found was actually some of the quirks in the early design process in the image generation, because this was like 2 years ago when things were not quite so good. Some of those quirks actually pointed to different silhouettes within the clothing that actually were quite creative and quite interesting. And so we actually built some structures to capture some of the more creative ideas that came out of this design tool, and integrate them into like a structured process rather than treat them as anomalies, right? And I think you have to kind of treat the hallucinations and the weirdness of AI as a feature and embrace it, and know that you're going to get some weird stuff and some unexpected results, but that's actually part of, part of like working with humans too, right? Like you get weirdness and surprises and little like avenues that you go down when working with humans. And I think, probably yourself and a lot of your listeners have had weird things happen where they go off in some random direction with AI and they have to rein it in. But like sometimes those actually are part of the exploration process.
Yeah, totally. It's so funny. I hadn't really ever thought about that before. Like, yeah, humans are pretty weird too. They have their own hallucinations.
Totally. Well, actually, so that's one of the things that's really interesting. So I think in the last couple of years, I actually think, in working with this new type of intelligence, we've been able to have a lot more deliberate conversations around what it's like to be a human, and it's almost like a mirror on humanity a little bit, right? And you think about, yeah, people talk about hallucinations a lot, and it's an issue, and you have to manage it. But human memory is terrible. Like it's well known within, criminal justice that like human memory and testimonies, people kind of construct stories in their head around memories, even with the best of intent, right? It's called confabulation within human psychology. And it's not that dissimilar to how AI works. And I think what's actually interesting is a lot of the quirks and weirdness of AI systems are kind of similar in some ways to how humans work too. And we're still figuring out human psychology after thousands of years of studying it. So it's probably optimistic of us to think that we're going to figure everything out about AI in a few years too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, there's like a famous Black Mirror episode where, you basically are just recording everything all the time. So you have like a documented reference point of your entire life, essentially.
Yep.
The second they have like, these glasses can record everything and then it goes inside your eye and then, and what was so poignant about that episode was like how damaging and dangerous that is. I mean, there's a great essay from who's the guy who wrote Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn?
Yep.
My goodness. Samuel Clemens, but his name is actually
it's on the tip of my tongue. Can't remember now.
Somebody tweet me and tell me I'm an idiot. Anyway, he wrote an essay on the beauty and respect of white lies, where you don't really, if someone asks you how they look in those jeans, it's always like, man, you look great. You know what I mean? Like the little white, the little white lie is regarded as polite. Now, when we have like a photocopy recollection of everything, then, all of these white lies get exposed, not only with that we're maybe doing with our coworkers, our family, our friends, but all the white lies we tell ourselves, which I feel like will just like eliminate all the confidence that anyone's ever accumulated because, I think confidence relies on creative storytelling about your past and creative projection about the future, so we're starting to think about hallucinations as they tighten up. I don't know. It just makes me think of like how much I actually appreciate human hallucinations, at least when it's surrounded around like just the polite pleasantries of life.
Yeah. Like well-intentioned ideas and approaches. Yeah, totally. And I think that it raises this interesting question of like, how do you think about trust and honesty and openness? And this is one thing that I think that's really, really important as we sort of start to navigate this as a society. And, one of the concepts I was in a meeting talking about recently was the idea of a personal data lake, right? And so, you have enterprise data lakes and everyone thinks about how they can kind of create a data pipeline into their AI tools, all this kind of stuff. But how do you think about that for yourself? And like what data do you want to share with AI systems and not? And then how do you think about which are the companies and the tools that you want to share that with? And I think there's a lot of opportunities too for companies to start to think about how do they become a trust broker and a way of protecting your data from leaking and getting out there, and thinking deliberately around who you share your relationship data with AI systems on.
Yeah, I'd love to get your opinion on this a little bit. As we're looking at the future and we're looking about what's coming next, it's very obvious that like there's going to be some kind of AI companion that's going to be with us at some point, close to birth, all the way through our entire life.
Yep.
And as we're starting to think about companies, one of the trends is like, okay, we want to create our own AI agent, chatbot, whatever it is, to our website, to our app. We want you to engage with our technology. The other side of that is, do we want to have our own personal, safeguarded chatbot that we build a tight relationship with, that then we share access with that app, with that thing, so I think of it of like, we got that new Avatar movie coming up, So like when an avatar wants to jump on their dragon, like it plugs its braid into like the dragon's tail or something. So there's like a connection. And I really see like that as kind of being a metaphor of like what we're going to do, our one potential way with our kind of personal AI agents is that like we'll have ours and that will actually interact with the company as opposed to all these companies having theirs that's trying to interact with us. Where do you see the future going? In which direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think, actually, I see it going in a couple of different directions, partly based on which kind of phone you have, right? So, like an Apple phone, I have an Apple phone, right? The Apple Intelligence approach is very much that they're building Apple Intelligence into your device, and so much of the what you do and what you tell it and what you share with it stays on your device, and you own it. It never goes back to Apple. The Android phone is very different, right? All of the data goes back to the Google servers wherever they are all over the world. And I could imagine a situation in the pretty near future whereby Apple Intelligence becomes that kind of trust broker for you. So if I log into a new website, some kind of app, agent, assistant, whatever it might be, Apple Intelligence could very easily give that agent or assistant a little token of information about me that's contextual to the type of information they need to serve me in a personalized way. But they don't get to keep that. They get that for a moment just to make the right recommendation to me or offer the right service to me. And then Apple takes it back and it stays on my device. So I can see that that's happening pretty soon with like, an Apple phone, for example. But I think not every company is taking that approach. I think there'll be pretty soon a bifurcation of the market between ad-funded AI services and then services that you might be more likely to pay for, that in which you would actually protect your data and they would not sell that data or provide it to advertisers. And I think we'll probably see a big difference. And I think that will play out in complex ways around trust. So right now, if people talk to ChatGPT, they actually generally studies show that people trust ChatGPT more than Google. Because now, Google used to be super trusted like 20 years ago when you just got really good search results. Now there's a load of ads and sponsored links. You don't really trust the answers that come out from that. And, studies prove that out. I think we might get to a situation in a few years where if AI services start to become more ad funded, you're going to start to question what are the answers they're giving you and why they're giving you that in a different way if it's an ad funded system as opposed to something you're paying for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as far as trust, it's like people definitely do not trust Google and they barely trust ChatGPT. I mean, I feel like generally speaking, I feel like generally speaking, we're kind of moving further and further towards a low trust society, which I think is kind of maybe new for America. And so you see the rise of like the surveillance kind of increasing, particularly with AI tools. And I think this is going to grow. I see where like an opportunity for, the technocratic Illuminati to like win back some trust is that if we are interacting with our own AI agents and there's opportunity to actually not for them to earn money from advertising, rather for the user to get paid for advertising. I've seen a couple of models of this, of this a couple of times, but truly if you have kind of a hierarchy of data, then you're willing to like say like, okay, if it qualifies for this row, then it can move on to the second row. So you have this deeper and deeper qualification for certain products so that then the company that wishes to market to you actually pays the individual user. I think we're really close to that. And I think that helps build the trust, not only because now people are getting some kind of dividend in their crypto wallet that's stored in the browser or whatever.
Yep.
But also, the qualification for the right products is going to find people much easier,
Yep.
So I would love to see that happen just to improve upon kind of the deterioration of trust, just kind of culturally across the whole society.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the other thing it raises too is the flip side of that is how does AI actually build trust in humans and companies as well? So it's not just about what humans trust, it's now a question of what does AI trust? So I'd imagine, for example, like a lot of your listeners, Ryan, might be founders and people who are running their own businesses, and they're thinking about how does my product or service get mentioned by ChatGPT or Gemini when someone's asking a question, right? And so that increasingly is becoming a question of trust in terms of what are the trusted answers to those questions that they're asking in the eyes of ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude or whatever it is. And so I published a book recently called When AI Shops, and it's all about AI shopping and agentic commerce and the new kind of rules of the road for marketers in terms of how you build trust with LLMs and how you get visible to them. And one of the things that LLMs look for is they look for very recent, very contextual information, but also consistency of stories about that service or product across the internet, right? And so that's their marker of trust. So like you could have, great stories written about yourself on your website, but then on Reddit and Wikipedia and other sites, they're saying a very different set of things about you. And so LLMs are picking up on that, and they will downweight that kind of company or that service because they're seeing there's a discrepancy between what the company is saying and what the rest of the internet is saying about them.
Yeah, I love that. All right, we're at that time in the show where we're entering the quantum round. Are you ready?
Let's hope so.
Okay. So you wrote that AI is making us smarter and dumber. How's it making us dumber?
I think it's making us dumber in that it's super easy just to not think about things. And it's like going to the gym. If you don't train those muscles, you lose them.
Yeah, 100%. I noticed that myself. Most of the folks here are in startups in various stages, working with a company like Coca-Cola. What's kind of your favorite thing about working with enterprise teams?
I mean, they obviously have a lot more complexity to deal with, right? In that they work in large systems, and it's like moving a super tanker. But once you actually get the traction to do something, things can move incredibly fast, and the impact that you can have is much bigger. And so, like, part of my passion in my career is how do I actually work with very large companies to do things that are super complex in large organizations, that give them a huge sense of satisfaction that they've managed to move that kind of super tanker in a new direction.
Yeah, totally. It's super impressive. This audience loves business ideas. Do you have any cool business ideas rattling around, particularly ones that can be sprung up to $1 million run rate quickly?
Oh, you mean like a business idea that I'm working on or for other people?
Yeah, either.
Okay. So I got this idea that I'm actually looking for alpha testers around. So if anyone's interested, I'm looking to build a new human AI collaboration measurement system. So I'm building an alpha version of this. It's a Chrome extension that actually would plug into your Chrome and monitor not what you're saying and like not tracking exactly what you're doing, but actually monitoring the quality of your collaboration with AI systems, whether that's ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, and then using that to measure how effectively you're doing and giving you advice around how to do a better job, right? So I think everyone that I know, I work with so many people who are looking at how do they improve their skills in working with AI. And I'm thinking about how can I build a business that can track that, give people real-time in-the-moment advice around that, and give them real direction around what they can do next. So that's something I'm kind of building a testing group around. So if anyone's interested, maybe you can put the information in the contact details.
You bet. I'm definitely interested too. I think that's a great idea, largely because I think it would uncover a lot of patterns that maybe you're not aware of that I wouldn't be aware of.
Yeah.
Because like now every kind of application has a glowing AI button in the right-hand corner where you can use, but I never hit that button. So it would probably see like me going back and forth from like spreadsheets to Gemini over and over again, when it's like Gemini's built right in. If it had a recommendation of like, hey Ryan, you actually don't need to be like toggling back and forth. You can do this automatically. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I've got a website. It's corix.ai, CORRIX.ai, where people can sign up as a alpha tester.
What is it?
CORRIX.ai.
Corrix. CORRIX.com. Okay, cool. I'll definitely sign up now, and I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Or GPT put that in the show notes.
Yeah. Indeed.
More appropriately.
It's funny because a lot of people you do find in meetings a lot of people talk to the AI assistant now, like, okay, so now the next steps are this. Like you can see people starting to do that.
100%. Cool. If you were entering college right now, what would you study?
I I certainly wouldn't be studying like like a vocational thing, like business or marketing or computer science. Maybe computer science, but actually like the actual how do computers work, not coding. I think I would probably look to study something that would help me to really think deeply, right? So something I'm passionate about, probably in the humanities, not worry too much about what it was, but something that I can really engage with and become an expert in. That's probably what I would look at, because I think that increasingly the ability to think deeply, become really expert in a domain is a skill in itself. And I think sometimes it doesn't always matter what that area is, but it's cultivating that ability to become an expert in a domain, I think is actually really important.
Very wise. Geoff, this has been so much fun. We love to give shout outs to charitable organizations, and we're going to give a shout out to St. Jude's, largely because they've been a client of yours. You want to give us a little rundown of what St. Jude's does and, what the kind of work you perform with them?
Yeah, so St. Jude's is an amazing institution. So it's a hospital, but also an incredible research institution, focused mostly on pediatric cancer. A lot of you might have heard of them. They do, you probably get a lot of mailers from them if you live in the US, around fundraising. And I've actually been working with them this year around how can they actually implement human AI workflows to improve the way they do marketing and fundraising, actually, which is a really nice thing to get to do.
Best. Yeah, shout out to them. stjude.org, Children's Research Hospital. Really happy about the work they do. Really happy about your work, sir. It is human-machines.com where people can learn more about your work. And then what's the best place for people to connect with you online?
Best place is LinkedIn.
Amazing. And we will link that in the show notes as well. Geoff, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you, Ryan. Pleasure.
Hey, founders, let me ask you this. Are you building with AI or getting left behind by it? If you're serious about scaling smarter, faster, and bolder, you need to check out aiforfounders.co. It's your go-to resource for cutting through the noise and actually using AI to grow your startup. Each week, AI for Founders drops a sharp, no-fluff newsletter, dives deep with expert guests on the podcast, and hosts monthly workshops where you can get your hands dirty with the real tools and strategies. Whether you're pre-seed or Series B and beyond, launching something new or just staying sharp, AI for Founders gives you the edge you need to win in 2025 and beyond. Hit aiforfounders.co to subscribe to the newsletter, tune into the podcast, and grab your spot in the next workshop. And it's all free. Build smarter, move faster, think bolder with AI for Founders. Now back to the show.